Welcome back to Dirty Pretty, the space where we own our feelings, honor our experience, share unfiltered truths, and talk shit, all through a lens of love. Today's guest, Leigh Maneri, wants you to stop spinning your wheels and get you the help you need to build a strong foundation for the great work of your life. As someone who has personally helped me bring my larger brand vision to life, Leigh digs deep into every crevice of who you are and reveals your blind spots. A soul strategist, a creative, and a holistic practitioner in one, Leigh unveils your golden nuggets and removes shame from you shining. Whether you're a passionate solopreneur, a corporate leader, or an individual ready for a life of deeper purpose, she works with you to create inner clarity and coherence to validate your value. Come take a load off from running in circles and get to the heart of your sacred purpose by learning the art of communicating your essence with ease. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. I love that remove shame from you shining. That's so beautiful.
You know, it's all you because that is exactly what you did for me.
Hmm,
Truth.
I love that.
Thank you. So I think right out the gate, I'm curious, and I'm imagining that people watching or listening to this are curious. What in the heck is a soul strategist? How do you define this? Give us the goods on what that actually means.
Yeah. Well, a soul strategist is basically it comes from the essence of what strategy actually means to me and what brand actually means to me, because there is a whole world of branding and marketing out there. And I feel the perception of it is that what you're doing is you're building a facade, like something that can go out there and speak for you, something that can go out there and meet people, and it's something that you design. And in my experience, through a lot of years of agency work, the best brands are the ones where you've gone in and you've basically just extracted the truth. Like, what is the soul of that brand? And my favorite part of the whole branding process is that discovery process where I'm always sending people really long forms. You went through those forms, the brand process, the brand assessment, the leadership assessment, like those are really important things because I want to understand not just, okay, what do you do and how do you do it, but also like, why do you do it? Like, what is it rooted in your childhood and your upbringing and your life up until now that made you evolve to this place where you can offer this thing in only the way that you can.
Mhm.
Um, and that applies to larger businesses as well and teams. And it's a little bit more tricky with teams because you have to understand the collective why, the individual why people show up to work every day, but also like what is the collective why that all of them share. So to me, strategy should come from soul. It should come from like what is that golden core of that person or of that company that allows them to do what they do in only the way that they can.
Mm. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Um,
And first and foremost, I will say, those, as you said, I think correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but like those many forms that you provide, for someone like me, that feels like there's so many different thoughts and ideas going on inside of the brain and the body about what makes someone like me drive and move and be inspired. I often fill out those forms like, well, they provided me the form, so I'm just going to dump it all in here. And I felt like it was something that allowed me to see all the different aspects of where I was coming from into a more cohesive place. And so like for anybody that's, watching this or listening to this and that's a trigger, they're like, I don't want to go through a myriad of forms. I want to just put that out into the space of there were several different layers to what those forms entailed that made me look at myself in different aspects. And, if you want me to edit this part out, I will if it's too proprietary, but like, looking at my human design, looking at my Enneagram, looking at different facets of me that I would have never, prior to working with you, considered an important aspect to building the core foundation of what my brand was. Now, since having worked with you, I will not work with someone in my business if they are not considering those things. So I just want to put that into play for anybody that maybe heard that, like, oh no, I want to just jump in and then have you solve all the problems for me. I don't want to go through a myriad of forms and they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There is reason for that. And I felt like for me, that really brought the soul aspect of my business into play, which before I'll admit was like, this is so woo. What the heck is this going to have to do with anything? Right. So it gave me a different way of approaching my business and also a different way of approaching the people that I work with and maybe who are seeking me out. So putting you on the spot, going back to that, what is the sole strategy of what you do?
Yeah, I think it is a lot of what you just shared is a common concern in terms of like approaching your brand. The reason why you would reach out to someone like me is because you're feeling some overwhelm in terms of, okay, I generally know who I am. I generally know what I do, but I don't really know how to articulate it. And what I do is I like to approach business from a holistic, like a whole human perspective. And it's something that I've always felt was missing. A lot of years, I was in agencies and building and scaling those agencies and hiring and dealing with management and leadership and all of these things that go with a bigger team or corporate or whatever you want to call it. And I always felt like in the working world, we have a way of compartmentalizing our humanity out of things.
Hmm.
Like this is the time where you come and you're productive, and we don't necessarily want to allow in emotions and what's happening with you right now spiritually and what's happening at home. But the truth is, like, we do bring those things anyway because it's all sitting there in our subconscious. And we may be distracted from those things, but we we still take them with us into our work. And so coming from that perspective, when I went independent and started my own consultancy, I really wanted to combine all of these elements that I had learned over the years of creative agency leadership, but also over the years of becoming a holistic practitioner and learning breath work and learning hypnotherapy and learning how to sit with someone and know who they are and create a safe space for them to bring all of themselves to the table.
Hmm.
Because when I first hear about who you are and what you do, I may say, "Oh, Shannon, that sounds so cool." But when I hear who you are in terms of your Enneagram, when I hear your human design and what might be a challenge for you, when I hear your vision for the world, like these things might seem in some ways not totally related, but they are entirely related to what you bring to your business every day. And I think they're one of the most important things collectively. It's the most important thing is to understand holistically who is this person or who is this team and what are they bringing to what they do every day. So did that explain? I know it didn't explain like my exact kind of process, but that's sort of the reason why there are those really long forms and that sense of drawing information out of someone. And I also want to add for those who are overwhelmed by needing to answer questions about themselves, the questions are designed in a way that you can kind of just stream of conscious answer. Like you
Hmm.
don't have to know that this group of questions maps to this area of your brand book, right? Like I know that. But really from you, I just want that stream of consciousness, like what you have such a beautiful story and like you told that story so beautifully during our discovery call. And as you're speaking, those threads start to kind of weave themselves together in my mind of like, okay, this is a really, like, Shannon is a really unique coach, and she is differentiated from anyone else in the market because of these things that she went through, because of this career that she had, because of her neurodivergence. Like, these are things that have you've evolved through, and they make you who you are, and they make you really special as a coach. And that's a reason why people should choose you. So figuring out those things is what I find so fun about the process. It's like finding these like golden nuggets in someone's psyche, and
Mhm.
we just find them through conversation and through written word, and it's a blast.
Mhm. So thank you for sharing that and thank you for putting it into words because something that I am going to share with you all who didn't have the opportunity to sit in on those conversations, those private conversations with Leah and I, was that, both as space holders or coaches in our own right, right? It's a very interesting thing to be in this professional realm because it's our job to be able to translate or to reflect back to an individual, but it's often the most sticky fucking thing to be able to do it for yourself. And sometimes you can trip over your ego in that respect. And that's why I wanted you to hopefully give, the listeners or the viewers a little bit of a nugget of, what does soul strategy mean to Leigh? Because, you pointed out, and I'm so glad you did, one of the most important elements is like you cannot extricate your humanity from anywhere you are because it's like that what is it, I think it's a real estate saying, like any if you were home, if you lived here, you'd be home by now, right? Like anywhere you are, right? And so all of these things come along with you. And the more that we defy them, the more we try and make ourselves robotic or myopic in a sense, is like we're leaving important nuggets on the table. These things that inform us, these things that drive us. And like, yeah, when you are having a tough time in life and you go to work, you're not able to just lobotomize yourself and forget that that is happening. It influences your energy, it influences your capacity and your bandwidth, and it also influences, your ability to validate the value that that thing is having in your life in that moment. So then you can be responsible for how you show up in the world. And that is what I think Leigh does. She takes all of these disjointed parts, they feel disjointed, right? All of these elements of your story, when it happened, who you were at the time it happened, how you were at the time it happened, that maybe isn't congruent with who you are now. And she brings it all together into this perspective that makes it like eating a whole sandwich, right? It's no longer just the bread and the cheese and the lettuce and right, it's not all the elements, it's the whole digestible thing. And that is your genius. And when you're saying threads, like my brain goes to a witchy place and I'm like, oh, she's weaving like the webs of the thread of the individual and really bringing it together. And that is a beautiful description of yourself. So going back a little bit, I think for people maybe watching this and thinking, first of all, she's beautiful and she's looks young. You have this very, very youthful look to you. It's like, how the hell old were you when you started this fucking journey? Because fun fact is that you were 24 when you became a director of operations. Like, I am someone very similar to you who climbed the corporate ladder, I would say, very quickly, very fast at a young age. And so, sometimes you think of executive or director and you think of someone that is maybe more seasoned in age, right? So tell us a little bit, considering it's like an hour, 45-minute show, right? How you lily padded forward. Like, where did you start? And how did that bring you to this place, having your own consulting business now?
Okay, let's see if I can. The first thing that came up for me was, wow, yeah, I really had no idea what I was doing when I was a 24-year-old director. Like, I wish that I could go back and sit with me at 24 and be like, it's gonna be okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I got started. So I had a print journalism degree. I've always been a writer, and I knew that I could translate that to marketing. And I moved from Connecticut out to Los Angeles, and I wasn't really vibing with LA, and I almost moved back to New York and I was interviewing for a job at Bloomingdale's that was like so not my job. Didn't get it. And then I found this company that was, I think the posting was on Craigslist. Like it was basically two co-founders and a girl who was managing accounts. And it was a digital marketing agency that was completely fresh and new. So I got in as hire number, I think officially number two. And the the CEO had a sales background. And so he started recruiting salespeople to go out there and pitch businesses. And so basically it just grew really, really fast. And I earned his trust and I earned the trust of the people on the team. I started participating in hiring. And before you knew it, we were like upwards of 40, 50 people in this. We leapfrogged a few offices because we just kept expanding so fast. And I think because of that trust that I had established and the skill sets that I brought to the table in terms of understanding people and writing and kind of inherently just understanding marketing, but also having a knack for organization and creating systems. Um, I was promoted and it was, yeah, a total whirlwind. Had no idea what I was doing, but I just failed forward and kind of figured it out. And then I went over to another agency that had, it was again, like I was full-time hire number two. And this had a very different feel. Wicked is the creative agency, still thriving in LA. And they were very focused on like quality creative, whereas the digital marketing agency was very like more of an assembly line situation, like SEO focused.
Mhm.
And again, that was like a more methodical and slow, but big time growth. So I ended up as chief of staff at Wicked as well, started kind of managing content and kind of worked my way up and hired most of the team there. And so it was yeah, totally amazing career path. And I started to learn about myself that I'm incredibly loyal, that I really like once I have my team, like those are my people, that's my family, and I'm going to take care of them. So I've really only been at these two companies. I was at Wicked for 8 years, and the decision to come away from that and go independent was so hard because literally they are my family.
Yeah.
And I miss them all the time, but it felt like the right time to go. So that was sort of my arc. And then I always had a foot, even though I always went the operational route professionally, I always had a leg in brand work throughout that entire process. So I would be managing operations, but also writing a brand book on the side. And that's the cool thing about working for a smaller company is you can wear a lot of hats. And for
Mhm.
a generalist like myself, that can feel really good and fulfilling. So yeah, I just fell in love with the brand discovery process, um, and wanted to kind of put that towards these brands that I was really excited about, like the solopreneurs who were doing what I had done over the years, which was become this holistic practitioner. So I worked with naturopathic doctors and energy healers. And since going independent, I've definitely been working more with solopreneurs rather than these big entities, these big hotels or resorts or real estate developments. And so it's felt very different, but also very fun and like a total kind of passion move for me.
hmm So if you were looking at the differences between, working with these bigger resorts or these bigger corporations versus, as you're saying now, you're delving more into like a solopreneur landscape, what would be the difference between those two avenues?
It's it's more about the individual. Like, of course, when you're working with a bigger team, you do have to understand what are the intrinsic motivations of all the people that work there. Why did they first start? at that, like, why did they choose that company? Those are really important details to understand because it represents that collective vision and that collective understanding of what makes them different.
Mhm.
However, with working with individuals, it's really fun because I get to kind of do what I was doing in a hypnotherapy session, which was let me understand your psychology, let me understand you as an individual. And, when we're doing brand work, what we're talking about really is brand identity. And with an individual, we're literally talking about their identity, like who are they as a person, because that's really important for someone to understand that is going to be your potential client. They don't just want to know what you're going to do for them, they are going to be loyal to the person that they're working with. That's why someone works with you, right? They may have gotten a referral from someone, but ultimately what they're going to do is like go over to your Instagram and see like, who is this person? Is what they're sharing, does it resonate with me?
Mhm. So in working with individuals, as a coach myself and works with individuals, I find that part of part of the piece of the puzzle professionally that I love the most is that I learned so much from working with my clients, right? This isn't like a mastery of skill set where it's like, I'm done now. I know all the things. Like that, it couldn't be further from the truth. And in working with them and in reflecting to them, I get the gift of unveiling certain aspects of myself. And so, what certain aspects of you, now that you're kind of lily padding into a landscape, like you said, with more solopreneurs, do you find that are being revealed to you about you?
Ooh, this is a really juicy question. I feel like I might have to pause and think about this. What is it revealing about me? I mean, I think the process of going independent and really stepping into being the leader of your life
Mhm.
is a huge move that inevitably is going to reveal layers of yourself that you have never witnessed. And I think that this is something that a lot of people go through when they are kind of waking up in their life and realizing that maybe they're looking around and they don't recognize their life. Like it doesn't feel like theirs.
Mhm.
And there were elements of that for me. And by the way, I have to mention, I don't know if I have the book over here, but there's this book called The Heart Aroused. I think it's called The Preservation of Soul in Corporate America. And it's by David
Mhm.
White, who is a prolific poet. And when I found out he wrote a book about corporate, I was flabbergasted and so excited and immediately purchased it. In the first chapter, he has a beautiful description of what it is like to wake up in your life and realize that something doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
And then to step away from a role or from a career and to entirely hit pause, it really is an ego death of sorts and a stripping away of identity. And it's so
Totally.
interesting when you lose the identity, this kind of shell of like, I'm a I'm a brand director, I'm a chief of staff, like those things bolstered me as like I have credibility and worth, and you
Yeah.
lose those things. And it's really a mind fuck. Like
Mhm.
you all of a sudden you have to come back and just be you. And you're
Mhm.
like, what is this? Like who is me? Like I've had these kind of like facades out there working for me. And again, this is a reflection of really the identity process, even the brand identity process is like, yeah, and what's underneath that? Like,
Mhm.
so it's been very interesting um, coming away from full-time work and really sitting with myself and asking what it like is there's certain elements of strategy that do not feel in integrity for me as an entrepreneur, and I get that different perspective now.
Mhm.
I've always been I've always been the consultant to my clients, telling them, oh, yeah, this strategy is going to be great for you. And now I'm on the other side, thinking of those strategies for myself and asking myself, is that in integrity with my values? Is this career even in integrity with my values? Like,
Mhm.
is leadership in integrity with me? Is that true to me? Um, is corporate the devil, or is can you find meaning and fulfillment in corporate? Like all of these questions are not really appropriate when you're in it because
Yeah.
you have a job to do. And then all of a sudden, when you take off the jackets of all of those titles and positions, you get to sit with yourself and ask those things. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I'm learning is that, um, yes, indeed, there are elements of my career that still remain in integrity. That strategy, I do believe there's a way to do it with integrity. And that's a lot of what we're talking about here today. Because that's a legitimate question that I hear from a lot of people. And yeah, I'm just learning a lot about who I am as a person without the title on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying it with like, all of these like guards, all of these facades, all of these things that kind of bolster you that are like, when you're in a position where you're management, you have people underneath you that you delegate to, and you have clients that you delegate to, and now you have to delegate to you on all fronts, including the fronts, which is, the dirty pretty of it, right? Which is, that didn't work. And I prescribed it to myself. What in the fuck? How come I didn't know that? You're you, right? And so, I think that what I hear you saying is a very popularly coined term. Carl Jung calls it individuation, right? You're stepping away from the pack. You're stepping away from everything that guards you or keeps you in this, incubative container that kind of bolsters you all the way around. And now you're exposed. Now you're individuated. Now it's just Leigh. And Leigh's whatever doing whatever Leigh's doing. And that's what you're about. You're presenting yourself without all of this other stuff in front of you, right? And so I think that sometimes when we get into that space, it is comfortable, it is familiar, and it does satisfy us because, this it's validating. It's validating to have a client be like, "Oh, Leigh, you're just so smart. That worked so great." And then when you fail for yourself, you kind of fall into that trap of feeling like it was an invalidation of your skill set and your generalist ability and you being the forefront as the leader. And so for people that are kind of teetering that line, right? Of like, as you described being at Wicked, that was your family. I relate to you wholeheartedly. As a manager, I always wanted the people beneath me to supersede me. I wanted them to rise beyond me, right? I never wanted to have any sort of ceiling on them. Go fucking do you balls to the wall, do it better than I did it, right? And celebrate that. And so for people that are teetering that line, and I myself did it as well, there's a lot of safety in there. There's a lot of security in there, especially the idea of having a recurring paycheck, knowing what that dollar amount is going to be, or even anticipating a raise at the end of every quarter, every year, right? There's a lot of consistency. But sometimes when we are outgrowing things, that can be the daunting part. It's not that I don't love you, family, but I need to go live this way now. And so, what drove you to make that decision? In order to leave that comfort space, that safety space, without it having to be, and I see this a lot in our culture, there has to be animosity or aggression or something went wrong to part ways or to deviate away from the pack, whether it's your actual family, you're doing things differently than's been prescribed in your history of family, or it is your work family or whatever community you're deciding to deviate away from. What empowered you to make that step? Because it can be the thing that causes us to cling to what we know instead of allowing us to kind of warm up and kind of rub shoulders with, well, what could this new thing look like without having it to make either scenario bad or wrong?
Yeah, that's beautifully said. My primary reason was feeling sort of like a snail who knew that it was ready to migrate to a different shell, but really
See you,
like
it's like the snail.
and stayed in that shell for maybe a couple years past when it knew it should have moved to a different shell.
Sure.
It's just it's not necessarily like a bigness thing, like the agency was growing and every year we would get clients that were bigger and bigger and more badass and cool and we could do more creative things with. And so there was growth there, but I think there's just an inner knowing when you reach a point where it's time to step out in the name of learning more. Like I'm incredibly growth minded and being in the same position for so long, it felt like a little bit of stagnancy.
Mhm.
And for me personally, and I think that can be detrimental to the team as well. Like if you are just to if you're feeling stagnant and you're going to just keep going and going and going, like you're going to impact other people. So I think it was really important for me um, to grapple with that internal knowing. And it's funny because I didn't end up moving to another shell or a bigger shell. I sort of just took off my shell and then I was like, oh shit, I'm naked. Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So that's been the weird part, but I want to be really intentional about what that next shell is that I choose.
Mhm. I really appreciate you saying that because I think that sometimes we get to the point of contraction, which is what I hear you talking about, right? You were actually coming to a point where you were realizing you were out of integrity with what was motivating you to be a part of that familial community and want to be an inspired and passionate leader. And I really respect your integrity to realize, and it's so true, and I'm so glad you said it, that when you're not lit up to do things, sometimes you can make grave errors. And you can lead people in a way that's like phoning it in because you're not really present. And so many of the people that have been on this show have brought up this very same topic, right? Like you could be successful phoning it in, right? And you shared that you were because you kind of overstayed, and I did as well. But then now I'm, not to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me or clean it up if it needs to be, but looking back on that propensity or that need to overstay things, right? Now I think that that puts you in the position of realizing you were out of integrity by doing that. And it doesn't have to be something that, again, you don't have to make it bad. It can become, oh, look, I've learned that about myself now, right? And so, in deciding to move forward, then I had a friend say to me once where I was kind of giving a similar example of like, I'm just moving to a different shell. And my friend was like, you did not move to a different shell. You became a whole nother different fucking animal. You were like a snail that suddenly became a caterpillar and then became a butterfly. And you've been thinking this whole time that you've been in chrysalis, but you just haven't figured out how to use your wings. And when they gave me that visual, because I'm a very visual person, as you, Leigh, know, it really gave me the perspective of realizing that sometimes that contraction, that feeling of unfamiliarity, of angst and tension, can make us feel like we need to run in the opposite direction. We need to retreat. This is a bad decision because it feels tense, when really there's a willingness that comes with tension to embrace it for whatever it has to offer you. And so I feel like I hear you saying within that, facing that resistance is an undesirable aspect of what you do, right? You're walking people into their resistance. It's not exactly fun to say to someone, I know that you're having a hard time. Let's sit there together and have a great time in it. It's you're adept at it. It's a part of your skill set. So, what are maybe like two other things that you would say is not your favorite thing about what you do?
These are good questions. You really just come up with these on the spot, huh?
Not true, not true. As I was developing the podcast, I was like, this is what I would want to know. And this is
Mm,
what would be really challenging for me from an honesty place to
Yeah.
answer. And so I think that sometimes when we're challenged and on the spot, we are inclined to be the most honest because we're reaching for whatever is the most clear stream of conscious in that moment.
Yeah.
But also, it serves us to go back and be like, I didn't even know that I felt that way. And it introduces
Mhm.
us to a part of ourselves as well. So thanks for saying that.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. What do I not like about this? If I'm being honest, there's nothing that's coming up right now that's like, oh, I really don't like this part. Like even I've done a lot of brand work with people. I've also done some website work and some visual identity design, and the graphic design component isn't something that I've done professionally before. It's just always been something that I've loved and have worked with some incredibly talented graphic designers over the years. And um, it feels like play, like the designing component of things really feels very playful to me. So I don't have a good answer to that right now, but I'm sure I could come up with something.
I think
But it's
it's a
just
good
not,
answer.
yeah, not
I
coming to
think
me.
like, whatever is honest for you. Because look, we've had people on the show that are like, okay, I'm ready. This and that. And, I have that experience too, but it's because I sit and I think about that, right? Like, not saying that you don't, but like sometimes after I get off of a client call and I see that they are in a wretched place with their discernment, I fucking hate that. I
Mhm.
want to be the person that comes in and like extracts that from them. But then I would be robbing them of the genius that comes from having to suffer. I don't fucking like that about the world. If I could eradicate suffering, I fucking would. I would. That's my answer, right? But I understand, as you said, giving a holistic perspective of things, what's the saying? Like the goodness wouldn't taste as sweet without the bitterness.
Right.
And so like, yeah, I think sometimes it is readily apparent to us, but on the days that it's not, that's the dirty, pretty aspect of it. I think, again, going back to what we were talking about a few moments ago of like, not every breakup or separation has to come because something treacherous has happened. Growth is growth, right? It doesn't have to be that that person is a shit person and, because now you want to move on. And same for this very question, at this particular moment in time, that's just a part of the dirty pretty for you is that in this season, there's just a lot of what I would hear is gratitude for this next step that you have taken and you have embraced, despite the fact that I imagine what you're saying is that it wasn't an easy yes to come to, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that that's important to look at when we have any separation of anything, right? I always say it on this show with my clients everywhere. Everything is a relationship. Food, money, physical intimacy, family, profession, like it's all a relationship. And we don't have to, come up with an answer just to satiate the request, and that doesn't make it bad or wrong that we don't have that, right? So I think like sometimes I think as a culture, we get stuck in trying to find the negative when it's like, well, maybe there isn't any. And it's like, well, then people are going to judge me because they're thinking I'm better than everyone. I'm acting superior, right? There's just so much fully loaded shit everywhere. And that's why I love having these conversations with people. So if there's nothing that, you don't like, I would ask you, how does your work challenge you? Because you, as a growth-minded person, as you shared with us, being a growth-minded person myself, the crux of that is like, if I'm fucking bored, it's over. It is over. And I have to really be responsible of that because then I'm checked out, right? I'm doing that phone it in thing. I'm not respecting other people's time, the fact that they're there with me, and that's not who I want to be. So then how does your work challenge you to continue to grow?
Yeah. And I do want to go back because when you shared the lens of watching watching your clients feel a certain way and how that sort of is uncomfortable for you, I feel that in the sense of sort of in the vein of what you shared in terms of taking the shame out of shining.
Yeah.
It's so common to have this imposter syndrome and this inner voice that says, oh no, you can't do that. Like, who are you to do that? And
Yeah.
when I start working with someone, it's really easy to hear that in their language. And that is definitely a challenging part of it because for me, hearing their story and hearing what they love so much about their work and what differentiates them, and their vision for the world, it's so obvious to me that all they need to do is once we have this, this understanding of who they are, they really just need to go out in the world and share that. And having there be another layer of resistance there. You brought up the word resistance, like that's such a beautiful part of Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. Like with anything
Mm.
generative or creative that we're doing in our lives, there's going to be resistance there. And it's hard to watch someone go through resistance when you on the other side wish that you could just like take it out and place it down and be like, there now, your path is clear, like you're the
Yeah.
one holding yourself back. Your path is clear. You can move forward. And that just has to be something that that someone arrives at on their own. But there are things that I think both of us do in our line of work that that does at least show them the way. Like there's the path. Do you see that now? And it's like, okay, yeah, it's sort of still starting to, it's coming into view. There's still some resistance there, but I see it now. So that's like a something that I don't like, but also it's something so beautiful when you can alchemize that imposter syndrome into a sort of boldness and a confidence that comes from clarity and coherence that then allows them to go out there and resonate in the world. So it's also a really beautiful part of things.
Hmm.
Um, Speaking to challenges, I think it is, again, it's a fun challenge, but discovering what is discovering what those golden threads are that kind of make someone who they are or make a business exactly what it is and the way that it shows up in the world and does only that thing that it can do. Like that is it's a challenge and it's a very creative process to get there. And by creative process, I mean there's typically an arc to it where it's okay, I start to see these threads and then all right, I think I'm getting the hang of this. And then it's like, oh my God, this is horrible, and then it's like, wait, something's coming together. And then bing, it all
Yes.
comes together and there's the brand presentation. And it's like I get to see you see yourself, which is a really beautiful process. So and another challenging part of it is the kind of balancing that um, the inner and the outer. Like there is a need to go inward. There is a need to extract and to understand the soul of who you are in your business. And there's also a need then to go out into the world and take action.
Hmm.
And I think we can feel really good about our brand, once we go through that process. And then when it comes to, you're like, okay, I love this thing. And then you like turn to your, I don't know, I'm visualizing like a valley that you're about to go down into, and you're like, oh, okay, this is now I need to take this thing and shout it from the mountaintops. And I think that's the part that a lot of people, myself included, struggle with is social media and what is that strategy? Like, because you start to feel like you have to show up in a way that isn't in integrity with you. So I think that there's an inherent challenge to social media as a platform and showing up with integrity. That is a very tricky um, tightrope to walk.
Hmm.
And I know that you're experiencing that right now. Like you've just rolled out this strategy, which I can tell because you're starting to use your brand templates and like it's beautiful. The art, I don't like the word content, the art that you're creating and putting out there is beautiful. But I think that is it's a huge challenge to balance the inner and then making it outer and finding that resonance with the people that you want to serve.
Yeah, I call that putting the energy into action, right? Like when you have this creative, and I think everybody is creative, just depends on how you exercise is what makes the expression you nuanced and unique. But it's constantly checking your feet. And that can become a delicate dance in and of itself because it's not continuing to be consequentially critical of yourself in a way that's like, oh, that didn't go the way I wanted to, or it didn't get the response I wanted to. Or, constantly going back and trying to refine every single thing that you did instead of allowing it to live in the moment and let how it comes out in the moment to be the beauty. Like you saying, looking back and seeing, okay, I probably could have left sooner. There's beauty in that. You get to know, like, oh, is that somewhere I do other places, And if so, how can I use it to my benefit, to see myself clearer, to be more responsible for my life, right? And so if you are navigating your life in the energy that you're trying to convey as far as your art is concerned, and I think you're bringing this into a really like fluid, beautiful point here. Like, what boundaries would you say are necessary around developing, curating, communicating, expressing your brand, right? But your art. What boundaries would you say somebody who's like, okay, I really like what Leah is saying here. I really enjoy the holistic approach, but how can they check their feet real time in this conversation to be like, all right, how am I making sure that I'm being in integrity with myself? And maybe an integrity to the point where I maybe need to hire Leigh.
Yeah, I would say find a way to create a spaciousness for you to express whatever is wanting to come through you.
Mhm.
And so that can look like a morning routine that creates the spaciousness. For me, it's meditation followed by meditation and visualization, and sometimes prayer or tarot or something like that. And then daily pages, which are essentially just I have a Notion template and I open up a new page and I just dump whatever is in my heart. And this is such a beautiful skill that used to be innate to us. And I think we've lost it. Majority in the Western world have lost the ability to focus and to stay focused on one thing for an extended period of time. And when we lose that spaciousness that is required for us to create. So I think that this could relate to many folks as kids. And for me, like I would say, Mom, I'm bored. And she would point to the craft cabinet and I would open up the cabinet, I would take out my beads, and I would create something really cool that
Mhm.
came out of spaciousness. And we don't always have, with kids and jobs and all of our responsibilities as adults, we don't always have that spaciousness and boredom. And sometimes boredom is just not an option for us. However, we can carve out that time to bring forward whatever is bubbling up inside of us. And I think that's actually really important to staying aligned with your truth and being on a path where you don't have to wake up in your life and look around and say, this doesn't feel like me.
Mhm.
If you're doing this process every morning and you're taking out your journal and you're just telling yourself the truth, that doesn't mean you have to share it, but some of those things that you do write or express, or maybe you're painting, like whatever that expression is to you, you might want to share it. And I think that when you do share those things that come through earnestly from the heart, that those are the times where you feel most fulfilled in sharing. And when we look at strategy, a lot of times there is there are tactics woven throughout about how to hook someone and how to grab people, and we're catering to a mass of folks who have broken attentional systems who are
Mhm.
going to say, ooh, and then keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I don't subscribe to that. Um, I don't subscribe to those tactics. I think it's much more important to create time for yourself to bring forward something deeper, and where it can be helpful to have a content strategist or a social media person working for you is that they can then take what does come out of you and turn it into something that is easily digestible from the
Mhm.
folks that you want to reach. So yeah, I think I kind of took that in a different direction, but that would be my advice is to again like get really find that spaciousness to get really quiet with yourself and to tell yourself the truth and see what wants to come through you.
Yeah, I had a coach say to me once, for those that are like trying to digest this in a social capacity, I had a coach say to me once, look at your wherever you show up socially, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, Substack, YouTube, Snapchat, fuck, there's so many fucking places you can be showing up. Really look at the places that you're showing up and ask yourself how congruent you are to be in those places, right? Like, don't just show up in all the places because all these platforms exist. Like, who the fuck cares? If you're not a writer, then don't have a Substack, right? If it's not congruent for you, don't feel like you need to be compelled to create something just because something exists. Also, allow wherever you do show up in that congruence to be your own community, right? Like, if you want to talk about farts and people don't like talking about farts, then that's not the community for them. Talk about farts, talk about your gas, talk right. And I'm saying that to be funny because I think social media needs a little bit of levity to it, right? Ram Dass says, like, find the humor and the humanity of things, and it creates a certain levity to your life. And I know that's very triggering for people because life is treacherous and there is a lot of trauma and grief, but finding the humor and finding the way that we want to interact in our communal spaces allows us to claim that I'm alive too, damn it. And that's what makes your life more spacious for you. On the other side of things, though, in a more like personal space, like whether it's, I hear you talking about like ceremony, ritual, habit. Practice this habit, whether it's going to the gym and that's your spiritual outlet to exercise your energy so that you can hone your fire energy. Let that be that non-negotiable for you so you can create that spaciousness in your life. If it's meditating, do that, right? If it's pulling cards, do that, right? There are a myriad of ways that you can do practices that help you to secure your boundaries so that you can be the type of person that you feel like you are, right? Like know your energy and then be like, I learned this from working with Leigh. Like, is that a Leigh thing to do? Like, is that your style, Leigh? Like, is that how you actually present yourself? Or are you just doing that for effect? Or are you just doing that because you've seen other people do that? And something that's come very clear to me in the past, recent, present is, you can be so good at something and then make yourself feel like it's wrong to be that good at it. Because it's like, maybe this should be harder. Maybe there should be like some sort of push pull. And I hear you saying that as a culture, we've gotten so accustomed to there being a fucking problem that we haven't even allowed ourselves to be like, yes, I do talk about farts in this space, and it's fine that you don't like it. And let it be fine, right? And so I
Yep.
hear you talking about, boundaries in a way that is spacious, yes, but also very particular and unavailable for feedback if you don't want that feedback and it doesn't feel congruent and beneficial for you.
Yeah.
So the to add to that, which I wanted to, since you're talking about, I feel like you're saying the ways that you keep it spacious in your life and your business. Why? Why are you cut out to be a soul strategist, Leigh? Why you?
I think that getting to this place, it feels like a natural progression for me because so much of my life I was searching for identity.
Hmm.
And I have always felt because I'm very porous and very sensitive and very empathetic, and I would read the room. and I would shift myself to kind of make space for other people to be in their full expression, or maybe to create safety in the space, cracking jokes to make that person feel comfortable, or physically moving aside to bring them into the circle. Like there's, I think for sensitive beings out there, we tend to kind of be very accommodating, and because of that, I would take on the energy of an environment, and whomever I was hanging out with, I would kind of take on their identity. And that applied to boyfriends as well. Like whatever is their thing, I'm going to go start doing that thing with them. Like there would be kind of a porousness and a merging that I noticed over the years. And in human design, this can be represented in an open G center, and which I do have, and also your energy centers. If you have a lot of open energy centers, you tend to be a very open and kind of porous person. And I have only two out of, I think there's 8 or 9 energy centers filled. So
Hmm.
that basically created an ongoing identity crisis for me. And I've always been in my adult life seeking that sense of purpose, and what is that, what's special about me. And like any time that someone would reflect back to me, like, you're good at this, I would just eat it up, because I was like, really? Like, I've always felt like I couldn't see myself clearly, but I could see others very, very clearly. So being in a position now to use my sensitivity and use my empathy to understand people on a really deep level, and to reflect back to them who they are, it feels very soul nourishing and fulfilling. And then the other part of me that is kind of innately driven to this work, beyond just my career progression, is my ability to study, to be really curious about life, and to study life. Like my entire childhood was spent crouched down, looking at the ground at some insect or frog, or, walking slowly behind a bobcat on the driveway, because I just wanted to be friends with it so badly. Um, so it's that kind of curiosity of nature, and what drives beings, not just people, but also animals. Like, how do they know what to do when their mommy and daddy don't tell them with verbally, like, this is what you have to do? They just have this impulse and this knowing to do what they need to do. And I think humans have that too. And I find it really fascinating, um, figuring out what that kind of inner compass is for people. So yeah, it's a very innate drive to do this type of work. And I'm really fortunate that I landed in these agencies where I, not only was thriving in a leadership sense, but I got to be creative, and I got to explore this ability to get to the soul of other people and entities.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think maybe people watching this or listening to this, just watching your decorum and how poised you are, and also how I think effortlessly you articulate even your pauses, even, oh, let me just take a minute to think about that, right? I think it's very important that, people get the opportunity to hear from subject matter experts or people who are accomplished in any field or capacity, even if you're starting out, right? Like I said, like, if it feels easy for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not excellent at it. It might actually be the opposite. This might be your lane, right? Thank you for pointing out that instinct is important. Intuition is important. And that, I think culturally we're evolving, and I'm very excited about it, to a place of, not fearing our feelings and actually using them as tells. And so thank you for pointing that out. But also thank you for, letting people know that you can be as accomplished as, reaching these upper level management positions and multiple startups and, starting your own company, and still have moments where you're like, I'm not sure. Right. And I will just out myself. Leigh knows, like, there would be times in our conversation during the branding where I'm just like, I'm just not sure. And, she was that person because I'm very similar to you. I've made mud pies. Like I've eaten dirt. I've gotten hurt because I played with wild animals. Like it's just the nature of me, the insatiable curiosity, right? But you are the person sitting on the other end being like, please don't not do this, right? And I really hope that that is speaking some power and some wisdom to anybody that's listening or watching and is like, I can't get away from it. It's in the pit of my stomach. It's in the back of my cerebellum. It's in the backbone of my soul. And yet, do I have permission to do it? I'm not sure, right? And that's okay to have the uncertainty, but what does that gut say? What does that energy say? And just like look into that a little bit and really honor it with like, a love of devotion. So thank you for saying all of that because I think sometimes we get to the point where we feel like we have to hold ourselves as like, I know fucking everything in order to be taken seriously, in order to be valued, in order to feel like an asset in that particular realm, profession, relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah,
So,
I want to add to that. I think that that posture of I have to know everything, I think it actually cuts us off from our wisdom and from our life force. I think that it is if you think of if you think of it visually, when we are posturing about something, we're really kind of standing up out of the seat of ourselves and we're putting on a front or a facade. And we might be able to go as far as whatever we have scripted in that facade, but you've cut off this sort of cord that goes to your life force. And so I think when we when I think it's really important to maintain curiosity and to maintain an openness and an understanding that nobody is certain about anything. Like I think it's incredibly rare that people are 100% certain about their career trajectory, about their relationship, about how they're parenting. Like, don't for a second allow yourself to rest in the place of I have to be 100% certain about this in order to move forward. And I think the way of the universe is constant expansion, it's constant motion. And the worst thing that we can do is to just stop completely, right? Like to make a decision means that we're going to learn something and it's going to give us a sign to move to that next thing. And I'm
mhm,
not coming at this from I'm an expert in this and I've done this for, many years flawlessly. It's because I need this advice as well. Like I get in those moments of okay, I think that this has to be perfect, so I'm just going to stay in this position. But I think it's so important to remember that you don't have to be certain to make movement in your life and to move forward.
mhm. I agree. I think the fun of it is like being able to see who you're going to be regardless of whatever happens. And that's a challenging thing to surrender to. But I agree. I feel like, the wisdom is in learning. And I think that when we give ourselves the opportunity to be like, well, worst case scenario, I'll have to depend on myself, that really speaks volumes into just you and everything that you do after that, I think. So as we wrap this up, I love that last bit. I'm like, oh, that could be a whole nother conversation piece. But as we wrap this up, what final thoughts would you like to add? Would you like to expand upon something you already said, but, added something different to it? What final things do you want to give or what takeaways do you want people to walk away from after watching or listening to this?
There's so there's so much swirling. I've been in like Substack writing mode, so I have all of these these different topics that are sort of in my periphery. And um, I think what I want to say is do whatever it takes to make a life that feels like it's your life. and know that it's going to kick your ass to get there. If you're not there, know that it is going to be very difficult. Um, I recently, stepped away from my salaried role, and I also a couple of months ago ended my central partnership, and um, I don't have kids. And there's this, like, my entire life for the past few months has been this huge question mark. And there's been the loss of identity and all of these things. And there have been times that have felt so utterly hopeless and in a really like scary way. And I want to say that because I know that there are moments of that in everyone's lives. Maybe everyone is too big a generalization, but I know that there are people out there who have moments like that and who maybe even feel the stirrings of that subconsciously. And that might be a reason why they're afraid to take a leap into something because they're afraid to meet, once they lose that sort of shell of a role or a relationship or whatever it is, they're afraid to meet what's there. And I just want to say, um, it's okay to go there. Like from the dawn of humanity, people have been moving through that, and it is really challenging. And when you're in it, remember my voice and know that there are other people out there who are going through that exact same thing. And that helps. And reach out to family and friends and people and talk about it. And don't go it alone. Like there is a reason we're tribal creatures, and we also, like everyone else in the universe, we do need a job. Like if you think about the bees who are, it's their job to pollinate, and we need that too, but it's also okay to pause, to press pause and to take a step back from your work, and to really be intentional about what's next for you. So yeah, I just want to say, like, do do what it takes. Tell yourself the truth and be willing to stand in the discomfort of what's next and know that there are others out there who are doing it too.
Mm. Woo! If that doesn't make you want to go and get in Leigh's energy, just see what she's about. I don't know what will. So, for those that are watching and are like, hey, I agree with a lot of things that you're saying, or maybe I don't agree, but like you're tickling something inside that I didn't even know was needing to have that feeling or sensation awaken, given permission. What do you have going on? What's coming up for you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, leighmaneri.com, Leighaneri. And same with Instagram, same with Substack, leighmaneri.substack.com. Substack is a platform that I'm feeling very congruent with and that I'm really leaning more into. It's been really fun to engage with different writers there, and to create sort of a community there. And I feel more safe to share in that environment. So if you want those really those deep nuggets of things that sometimes have to do with strategy and brand and sometimes totally do not, I'm writing about my psychedelic experience right now. So
Awesome.
yeah, so subscribe on Substack, and yeah, I'm sure there will be much to come, and I'm just taking things one day at a time, and really being intentional with the projects that I choose. And um, so come have a conversation. You can DM me on Instagram and let me know what you thought, and I'm excited to continue the discourse.
Hmm. I cannot say enough good things about you as a human being, but also your professional acumen gave me faith again in the social space and entrepreneurialism. You are a brilliant human being. Your energy is absolutely beautiful. You, like I said, not only gave me hope, but also gave me that extra little push that I needed to move forward. Thank you so much for being here. I just love you as a human being so much.
Thank you, Shannon. I love you as well, and I'm so I'm just honored that I got to see you on a really deep level that most people probably don't. Like we put things in a pretty little bow, as best we can with a human identity. Like that's just not possible, in a holistic sense. But like I think that it was really beautiful being in sort of the messy part of it when we were just figuring it all out and hearing about your background and how you wound up where you are today. And I truly believe there's nobody better to serve your clients than you. And yeah, you're a true unique soul, and I'm really happy to know you.
Hmm. Thank you so much, making me emotional. And thank you so much for being here, watching, listening, whatever front that you join us. As always, be good to yourself for fuck's sake. Live honestly in the dirty pretty of your life and choose to do the next right thing for you. Until next time, bye.